I have people that say to me after almost 30 years in this business, when are you going to make a real movie?
I mean, if I'm not taking the risk and saying what I have to say, then, probably what is it that I'm living for?
Hi, welcome to our discussion today about documentary filmmaking for social good. Now wait, before you decide to head off and check out something else, we have 4 really amazing directors with us today. They're all documentarians, 3 are from India, 1's from the United States, and they're going to help you understand today a little bit more about what goes into a documentary. How do you even decide what to produce a documentary about? What inspires them to do their art? And maybe some tips and lessons on how you too could become a documentary filmmaker. More importantly, at the end, a special segment on recommendations from all 4 of our filmmakers on maybe some documentaries you might want to watch. So my goal today is for you to learn something, maybe be inspired, but most of all, just hear from these really amazing people. So joining us today from the United States, Sandra Luco. From here in India, Rukshana Tabassum, Tina Kaur, and Vinamra Pancharia. Thank you guys very much for joining us. Let's get right into it and start talking a little bit about the state of documentary filmmaking in India. You know, as I turn on Netflix, like I referenced earlier, I see a ton of stuff from the United States, very little from India. And I'm curious why that is and sort of what's it like to be a documentary filmmaker in India. Tina, why don't we start with you?
So Nick, the state of documentary films in India, I would not say that it is really very pink. The technology has become very cheaper. It is much easier to make a documentary film now than it was like 50 years back. But the challenge right now is that, all the documentary filmmakers, including myself, we really have to struggle a lot to raise funds for the films that we want to make. Because, since we are talking about films for social change, so I'm not sure if Netflix really wants to support filmmakers who are doing films on social change. Because, mostly the programming there works on entertainment, and sadly another entertainment. And films on social change may be educative, informative, and entertaining as well. But it cannot be only entertainment, like how they tell us to write things. So I think, a lot of good films are being made, and there are channels, TV channels, as well as there are OTTs on which the films are coming, and they are getting telecast and broadcast. But still, I think there's a long way to go ahead, because a lot of important films are there, but most of the TV channels or, even the OTTs, they shy away from showing the films because they think that it is either political or it is sensitive, or it can ruffle some feathers. So it's very difficult to pull so much of audience together in the Indian subcontinent and make everyone happy. Because when you're saying making films on social change, so then definitely, the films are bold and they show a mirror to the society. So they have to be, there will be something or the other which some may find offensive, the other may find it okay. So, I would say that films are getting made, but, the release of films is a problem. Raising of funds is also an issue to be tackled. It is not something that you just get into the fundings very easily. Like, I can only talk about what I have done. So the film that I made, I had to raise funds for it. I crowdfunded for my 2 films. So, so then, of course, you can do festivals. I have screened the films in universities, wherever I get space, independent spaces, wherever people open up and they would like to screen the film. But I still think, we still have a long way to go to become that mature platforms or channels or executives working there, have the heart to show films which where the filmmaker speaks the mind and people are okay, and they are acceptable if they speak a mind, and if it is less entertaining and it gets into the conflict, because the films are supposed to have a conflict. If there's no conflict in a documentary, then I don't know why would we make a documentary. Then it will be something like a newsreel, so then we have to understand that what is the grammar of a documentary film. So I think that is where the lag is.
All right, well, thank you. And maybe, Rukshana, we can turn to you for just a minute. When we talk about films for social good, what are we talking about? You know, what does it mean to be a documentary for social good, and what's the line between sort of having a cause and a message versus just trying to inform people about something? And where does entertainment come into it?
See, this is again a very personal sort of an opinion that I would like to share here. I always feel films are always meant to make the audience question. You know, it's not that we are preaching something, but you're making you question, you know, by putting, because I think in the world we always have different perspectives, and you cannot live in a world where there is no duality. And so a film is only, you know, like it'll only reach an audience and sort of kind of connect to them if you help them question that, why is this happening? I'm showing you this is happening and this is happening. There are different perspectives, right? So when you talk about social change, see, right now, I to be very honest, you know, the entire world is going through a phase of extreme polarization. You know, people are ready to like unfriend people from their Facebooks if they think differently. People like unfriending people from their lives if they think differently, right? So right now it becomes even more like pertinent that we present our narratives in a way where we actually keep our own politics at a certain place and also see on both the sides, you know, because I have felt, I mean, I would only talk about myself, you know, while making a film, you always tend towards what you are carrying as your perspectives, right? But the moment you have more knowledge about certain other perspective, that's when truth reveals, you know. So it's very important to show both the perspectives, I feel. So for films on social change, I feel it's very important again to show both, you know, otherwise, you know, like how Tina said, conflict is like the main the thing in a film, you know, like life exists because of conflict. Duality is there because of which conflicts arises. And in India, like right now, there's so much dominance of a certain kind of philosophy that people do not want to hear the other side, you know. So like she said, it's, if you are thinking differently and you want to make a film on a different perspective that you want to present, it's very difficult.
Yeah, no, thanks. And I'd like us to get back to talking about funding as well, because I think that's a crucial piece of it, obviously. And I watched these documentaries where people started filming their subjects maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it's hard to wrap your head around how do you sustain 4 or 5 years of filming a subject and then editing and stuff. I mean, if a project's taking you 7 years to create, like, you still got to eat, right? So I do want to come back to that, but first, and maybe Sandra, we can turn to you for this. Rukhsana brought up a really interesting point about, you know, and Tina as well, about duality and conflict and you know, your own perspective. But I also think about, you know, a famous example would be like a Michael Moore, right? Where his own activism and his own personal views are absolutely a critical part of the sort of experience of watching his films. So what are your thoughts on inserting yourself as sort of the filmmaker activist versus letting your subject talk for itself?
Oh man, that is a huge subject, and it's one that I spend most of my days, professional life, thinking about, because I think that it's so important. I think we have to really go back to really thinking about what is a documentary and what is the purpose of a documentary. And I actually have a much different point of view from the people so far that have spoken on the panel about that. For me, there is really no difference between a documentary film and a fiction film in terms of intent and purpose. We are there to tell a story, to take our audience on a journey, to take them on an emotional journey that affects their minds and their hearts. And so I think that our purpose in terms of providing sort of the classic narrative structure of conflict, climax, resolution, all of that is just that we have a different materials that we're using. We're not creating, and we're not creating the story ahead of time, right? We have an idea and a sense of what we're going about, which is also what makes funding actually so very difficult, is that because we can't, it's not a safe bet in the stock market to invest in a documentary film, because we can't provide them with the script ahead of time and say, this is in fact what we're going to film. This is in fact is what is going to happen. And so for me, what I have found is that the subject that I have the most access to is my internal thoughts and stories that I can bring to it, or something that I am deeply, deeply involved with. The idea of being able to make a documentary that is objective, that shows both sides of it. I don't think that objectivity exists. I think that one can be fair. And so in a sense, it's very manipulative, right? I mean, and I don't mean manipulative in a bad way. And in terms of taking the subject's opinion versus your own opinion, I mean, it really has to be a collaboration. There are some societies that say that when you take a picture of somebody, you steal their soul. And in a sense you do. And I don't know if it's stealing, but I think that it's a huge responsibility to be the guardian of it for as long as it is on the camera or, in the picture. So I think that you unleashed the tiger when you brought up this as a subject for me, because I think that it's something very complicated, something very dense, and something that's worth really trying to grapple with and tackle with and spend one's time with. Getting in touch with other filmmakers, because we're all in the same boat, so to speak. And it's really the first time in my professional career that I have been able to have conversations about these very things at a time when, just the very nature of the profession itself is incredibly lonely. And so this is, can I just say that I'm so very grateful to meet all of you, to be able to have these conversations, and for you to facilitate it, Nick.
No, thanks, Sandra. And there's a couple of things to unpack from what you brought up, and we can do some more of this as we go along. This idea that you can't be objective. I'm a little hesitant sometimes with that, because it starts leading down towards this sort of there is no truth, and then if there's only perspective, my sense is that ends up in a place where then moral relativism and all the rest of it, which we can have a discussion about. But I think you're spot on talking about fairness first, right? And Vinamra, I'm going to turn to you for a second here. Sorry to put you on the spot. But when you're going out and looking to make a documentary film or any type of film, is it important to be fair and objective, or can you make a case for going out and saying, look, this is my perspective, I'm biased, but by golly, this is why I'm biased and I believe strongly, and here's my point of view? What do you think?
I feel for me personally, it is, at the end of the day, all the films, movies that we see are there's someone who's trying to tell a story. There's someone either with an idea or his perspective. And that's all we have been doing when it comes to movies and stories, because it's very different from just reporting something. When objectivity, you're talking about being objective, I'd say it's more of journalism. When you're showing something as it is and trying to be objective, still, I mean, I don't think you can achieve objectivity even in journalism these days. But as a storyteller, I feel it's always, and adding to the point, when you're saying what's a social, what's a film with a social change or message in it, I feel it's like good food that is appealing, that is tasty to people, and it has nutrition. So for us, if I'm trying to tell a story, I would first of all, because when we're talking about films with social issues, we are talking about cultural activism here. So it's a very thin line where, as a storyteller, I have to first master the culture. I'll have to target the culture first for the activism to seep in. So unless and until I'm able to get your attention or bring the story to you first in place, and that touches your heart, then only the message that I have for you will be able to, enter your mind. So as a storyteller, I'm always coming up with a story or an idea or a personal perspective towards an issue that I've experienced. And I think everything that we experience objectively, when we are trying to showcase it to someone else, we always add. I think it's not possible to be completely objective with anything, that even our thoughts, I think there's always your inner voice, because it has shaped you. The things that have shaped you as a person, you'll have a certain worldview towards things. And I think that plays a big part. So I would say it's always your voice at the end of the day.
But how do you go about sort of actually doing a film is an enormous investment in time, right? And at what point, there's a lot of stuff I care about, right? But I don't know, and I feel weird saying this, but I don't know if there's anything I care about enough to I'm going to devote 2 years of my life to this, which I don't know what to tell you. Such is life. But how do you sort of make a decision or a determination that, you know what, this subject is worthy of my attention out of all the subjects there are for this next time period?
I think it's like it's a very interesting question, because for me, if something interests me as a subject, there are times that you reach a point and you say, okay, it's not reaching there, or it's taking too much time, or maybe but if you need to have a connect at the end of the day, if when you're saying I'm moved enough to tell you a story, then I should be moved to a point where I have to tell the story irrespective of how much time it takes, how much money it involves, how much effort it makes, because and that is true for any kind of art. Even if you're making a painting and it's taking you years to make that painting, or you're composing a song, a film, it's true for any kind of art. And as an artist, the satisfaction that we get when we're able to express ourselves, I think that fight to express ourselves can take as much time as possible, but that fulfillment will only be possible if we complete that expression. It's like having a thought, building it up, and not being just because it's taking too much time and I'm just holding it within or leaving it in between. So that normally doesn't work for an artist. So I think for all creative people, yeah, there are times where it might not be feasible enough to complete a project, or due to whatever reasons. That is not in your hands, but you will, as filmmakers, and that is what independent filmmakers do. We survive on these kind of circumstances. We thrive in limitation, and we have been conditioned to now, it's like a war for us, because we know what's there, we know what the world is like, we know what's going to happen. So there's no point thinking about possible, not possible, jump into it.
Right on. That's a great message for an inspiring filmmaker as well. Sandra, is it sort of the same way for you then as well? This sort of, there's this story that's just bursting inside me that has to be told come hell or high water?
Well, I have a real live example for you. And you're talking about, you can't think of anything that you would spend 2 years working on. Imagine as he was saying, we are compelled. So my last film I just finished, I finished it 2 years ago. My last film is about the descent of my brother into paranoid schizophrenia and the destruction of my family. It is the last thing I wanted to make a movie about. It's personal, it's tragic, all of the elements that make an incredibly good film. But I certainly didn't want to be the one to make it, or the one to expose our family and the vulnerability involved with it. The reason I ended up making it and sticking with it is that because my brother actually shot himself in psychosis with his iPhone. And so I had something utterly unique, which is another thing that a filmmaker must look for. My access to my subject was utterly unique, and the perspective was utterly unique. Now that's something that if you have those two things, you're obligated to make the film. And I took his footage to a doctor at this Yale School of Medicine, and he looked at it and he said, I said, what do I have here? Because I wasn't thinking about making a film. I was thinking about, how do I help my brother? What is this that I have in front of me? And he looked at it with tears in his eyes. And he said, I have worked in this profession for 25 years. I see people with schizophrenia every day of my professional life. And I have never been able to see this, because by the time they bring the patient to me, the narrative has already been curated. So if you can continue filming, And so I went ahead and I started filming sort of my family's perspective of what my brother was going through. And, you know, we had no idea where the story was going to go or how it was going to end. 8 years later, I mean, the crowdsourcing was very good, but also too, it was, you know, it's just as hard to get money for, you know, because you don't know where it's going, you don't know how much. And so when I finally was able to premiere the film, what was so interesting is I thought that this was such a unique perspective, and then to find out that almost half of my audience in some way knew somebody or had gone through exactly the same thing. That's what keeps you compelled in it. And while I was doing it, I have to say that as things got really terrible, and there's some terrible things that happen in the movie, I thought, wow, this really is awful for me. This really sucks, to be honest. But the other part that kept me going was, I know this is really good for the movie. I know I have something here that is unique, a unique perspective and voice to show.
You have this unique answer. No, that's fine. But so you have this unique perspective, but I mean, at what point do you sort of make the decision to go from, okay, I've got this, you know, the doctors are really interested in this, and, you know, this is good for sort of historical purposes and medical purposes, but you still have to take that step to, okay, I'm going to sort of display this to the world, right? And your family's impact. Like, did you have a conversation with your family first, or how did that come about?
Well, you know, okay, totally full disclosure, bottom line here is that I was telling you that my family was in Portland, Oregon, and Portland at the time was reprimanded by the Department of Justice for the police department was reprimanded for excessive use of force against the mentally ill. So my brother had a very good chance in psychosis of being shot by a cop. And my real motivation to do this film, to start this film, came from, if I can make my brother the poster child for mental illness with the police department, I have a chance of keeping him alive. So the stakes are pretty high. And I think that anybody who gets involved, once you have an investment in it, you can't stop. You can't stop. And this included the death of both of my parents during the filming of this. And, you know, so, and it was like, no, you don't stop. I can see everybody nodding. I can see everybody nodding. They know exactly what I'm talking about.
It's an incredible story. Let me turn back to Tina for a second and pick up on that theme. Are you looking for the same sort of personal connection when you're finding a story, or do you come across? I was going to say you watch a documentary and get inspired, but that would sort of defeat the purpose. So, like, how are you getting inspired to sort of, you know, make films for social good?
So I just want to comment first on Sandra's documentary, because I've watched the documentary. Powerful, so heart-wrenching, like, you know, it's like, I don't know how did she make it. She's a very strong person, and she has the power to do that. Yeah, coming back to myself, I have done films in which other people are characters, and I've been following them as characters in my documentary. And I think very important thing is a heart-to-heart connection with whoever you're making the film on. Whoever. I mean, I have to have a very, very deeply personal connection with that person, because only that will reflect on whatever I'm trying to do. You know, his pain, her joy, you know, all that will reflect in the film, and I can do justice only if that person also has the same kind of trust in me, the faith in me is there. Then I can go ahead and think about, you know, making the film. Having said that, you know, now my film, which is under production right now, is a film on breast cancer, since I'm a breast cancer survivor myself. And I thought that experiences that I had, I really felt that in India, breast cancer is such a stigma. People don't want to talk about it because it has the word breast in it. I just find it very strange. People tell me, oh, you are a cancer survivor. I'm like, I'm not any cancer survivor. I'm a breast cancer survivor. Now, there's also science behind why breast cancer is different from other cancers. But, the kind of experiences that I've had in my own family, within the society, and how people look at me and the interaction that I have, I just felt so moved that, I have to speak about these experiences put together, because that is the only way I can, break this shell and say that, okay, having breast cancer is perfectly okay. You can survive, and, the kind of stigmas. There are only two ways that how women's body is looked upon in India. One is that either she's, sexually objectified, how it happens in Bollywood songs and otherwise. And the second is that she, the woman or the daughter or the sister, whoever, she's the honor of the family. These are the only two perspectives that, you look at women or women's body or women's health. So that particular culture is not there in our country. Like, even today, like, I'm told that just forget about it, that you had breast cancer, leave alone. Why do you want to make a film on it? And see, when we talk about social issues, everything starts with me. It has to start with me. If I'm talking about social change, it has to start with me. It cannot start with anyone outside. I'm not looking for a movement outside. I'm also looking for a movement inside me. What is happening inside me, and trying to document that and put it into the narrative. So I think it's very important to understand it is not only social good, it is social change as well. So,
no, fair. It's a fair point, but let me ask you sort of the same thing I asked Sandra. Was, okay, this is a very personal experience. And you noticed during this experience there was stigma around breast cancer, and you're meeting other people. At what point, though, do you go from this is terrible, there, someone needs to do something, and to actually doing the something?
So I think, like, I have been researching on breast cancer. I've met other people. I've been doing all that. And I felt that, other than I've written a fiction film on breast cancer, and, and all that fiction is a different story. But this particular documentary is there. I felt it was important for me to talk about it, because everyone was, putting a message in my private inbox on Facebook and asked me, oh, how did you come about it? Can you please suggest me some diet for my mother? Or what do you think about this? How is life after that? So I felt like, I have to put it together in a film, because I really felt that, there's also a transformation that I have undergone. Like how I'm looking for a transformation in a character, and I'm looking forward, of what does this conflict in a character that, I'm documenting, how does the circumstances change that person. I also realized that even my outlook towards life has changed. So I think that was the point when I decided that, now is the time that I want to, film this entire process and say, okay, this is who I was, and this is who I am, and this is what I've become, So I think that's what.
Wow, a couple of pretty powerful personal stories, and obviously a lot of bravery and courage in putting that to film and putting yourself out there. For Rukshana, do you sort of come from the same school of thought where, this, as I'm personally affected by something, I want to put that message out, or does something else inspire you? Where do you get your ideas from for documentaries?
So I'll just talk about this children film that I just made. It's called Apples and Oranges. And it's the subject for this film was overcoming differences, So a couple of years back, it's like 2.5 years back, I got a call from my producer, who I usually make children films for. And he said, okay, we want to make a film for children, because, the kind of environment we have in the country, there's so much polarization going on. We don't know, how it is affecting the younger ones. And funnily, I was going through a space where I was looking for my truth, because I would see all sorts of narratives floating in my social media, and, and especially today's world where you are living with so much fake news, you don't know what to believe, right? And you are so fast to form your opinions. So you read something and you're like, oh my God, these guys are not good. Then you read something else, like, oh, these guys are not good. So, but what is the truth, Then you have your own this thing. Okay, these are the websites which you can kind of rely on, and these are the websites or news channels you cannot rely on. So, but how do you, but these, like when you keep forming opinions and, you become such a judgmental person over a period of time that every time you meet someone and that person, you look at it with all the baggage that his ID carries. For example, the name is the first thing. You ask the name and immediately this person is from this religion, this caste, this, that, and all of that, right? So in India, especially, we are so diverse. It's a beautiful thing and also a big problem, because there are so many ways you can actually differentiate people. So then I was like thinking, how do I find the truth? Like, how do I figure out, like, how do we overcome these differences? So initially when she called me, I said, I don't know how to explain it to kids, how to overcome differences. I myself is like struggling, because what is right, what is wrong? Like something is right in India that might not be right in US. What is wrong out there might not be right here. So all these questions of morality and all of that, I was dealing with it. And so I said, no, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to make it. And but it kind of stayed with me at the back of my head. And then I was like, okay, like, let me just give it a try. And how do you make a film where you kind of do not pinpoint on any community, but you still put forward the message that you want to put forward? So I set up this film in a fictional land called Fruitistan. So fruit is just fruit, and it's called Fruitistan. And in this country, there are like two different communities. One is this apple eaters and the other is orange eaters, and they hate each other. They can't stand each other. And the apple eaters think the orange eaters are stupid, and the orange eaters think the apple eaters are stupid. So the children are also brought up in such a way that they have this they come with this baggage that, oh, apple eaters are dumb and they do this, and orange eaters have their own set of perceptions. So and then what happens? So in the beginning of the film, these two little girls, they meet in circumstances when they don't meet by saying, okay, my name is this and my name is that, but they meet in a sort of a circumstance where one helps the other and they become friends. So they never know the last name. So it's like Daisy, Apple, and whatever. So they're friends, and suddenly one day they discover that the other one is from the other community, and that's when all these conflict come. All the baggage of this, whatever you have learned over the years of conditioning. And how do you find truth? How do you start liking the other person? I feel only when you have enough knowledge about the other person. I feel all these judgments are only because you have limited knowledge about the other person. If I do not have an American friend, I don't know about the culture, I will only go by the judgments of whatever I hear on TV, that Westerners are like this, Western philosophy is like that, Western people do not have this. So unless and until I feel like knowledge gives you that kind of a power to see truth. So yeah, so I come from the same school of thought.
No, I love that perspective. And what I'm hearing a lot of, whether it was mental illness, breast cancer, community identity, and I love this idea of the apple eaters and the orange eaters, because when you put it into basic terms, it makes people feel kind of silly. Which I guess is the idea. But let me turn to Vinamra real quick. Do you sort of subscribe to the social stigma as a flashpoint for picking a topic to look at? I mean, that seems to be a theme that's developing in our conversation, this idea of social stigma.
For me, it's not that I look out or go searching for these things. A very basic example, I think all of us who have made films, they have been impacted in some way by what is going on outside and what is going on within us. And I feel my stories are all from experiences around me it might be a small experience for me. That one of my films I've made was my experience of me traveling from my home to my college. And just the fact that at every traffic signal, I was witnessing these small kids who was selling these books. And I thought they should be sitting in a classroom reading them. And they're small and they're selling them at the signals. And that really hit me pretty hard. And I felt like creating a fictional story, which I did at the end, and about a kid who's outside the school and who doesn't have access to education. And he sits under a street light in the night and keeps studying something which he's found from the garbage, some book, and all his street friends, he doesn't have a name, so people call him Tube Light because he's sitting under the street light. And that guy peeps into the school's windows and tries to learn. He started writing his name in English, Tube Light. And finally, how this story travels and he finally gets an access to education.
But that was on your. You said that was on your journey when you went off to college. That was sort of what inspired that you saw these kids. So, are documentary filmmakers born? Are they created? Like, what was the spark when you were a young person? You're still pretty young, but to sort of make this a vocation.
So my journey has been like, I was a child artist, so I started pretty early. So I was always in front of the camera to a certain point. Then I did my engineering. Then I did a job in the corporate.
You're like the perfect Indian son, right? I'm going to be a creative artist, but I'm going to get my engineering degree first.
Yes. So you have to have that backup plan with you. And then when I did all of that, finally decided I don't want to do this job anymore. and I went back into acting. But in 2013, so filmmaking just happened because I was looking for work as an actor, and I wanted to create something for myself. And so a group of friends we started making films. And then somewhere along the line, I mean, when you started, okay, what do we, base our films on, or how do we go about it? And then you recall, because all these experiences that you have inside you, and I think each one of us, we get this inspiration from everything that we have experienced in our lives in some way or the other. Like I made a very short film on someone when I was in the school. I had this visual of the small kid sitting out of the school of the same age. I might be in the 3rd grade, and the kid is also in the 3rd grade, and I see him selling a very small food item just outside the school gate. And the parents are actually accompanying their small kids and buying that stuff. So imagine the psychology, like the small kid, for him, it's a new normal. He thinks he's buying from the kid of his same age. And that kid that is something that some things have remained with me as I've grown up. And I think those become the inspiration for making such stories.
Wow. And then Tina, before you made your film on as being a breast cancer survivor, right? Was that your first sort of foray into feature-length documentary filmmaking, or had you always had the bug? I mean, what's sort of your history leading up to that film?
Yeah. No, I've been doing documentaries since almost 10 years now. And I have done like 5 films, and the film on breast cancer, that is like under production right now. So like earlier, the work that I did, so my films have been mostly on wildlife conservation. I've been very, very curious to know who are the people who live in tune with nature, because I feel to my understanding, that is the new normal. And I think that is my takeaway from this entire pandemic lockdown that has happened for so many months till now. And, that is also a quest that I've been pondering on and have been exploring in all my films. But of course, the one film that had got the maximum acclaim is 1984, When the Sun Didn't Rise. It's about the women living together in the widows' colony in Delhi. And this colony was made after the massacre of Sikhs. Some 5,000 Sikhs were killed in 3 days after the death of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi in 1984. So this was like a known thing. And since I'm a Sikh myself, and I was like, okay, the only thing I felt that there's no justice in the courts in this particular matter. This is a massacre that has gone unrecorded. And I was like, what can I do about it? And I felt the only way I can do some kind of justice is by trying to explore, if there is any story, if there is, some transformation happen, something that is there on this subject which is there. So I started doing the research, and it took me a long time to make. But of course, during that other time, I did other films as well. But this was the most difficult subject, the most sensitive subject that I touched upon. But I also feel very, very humbled in a way, because, when audience watched it, they received it so well, because there are so many Sikhs who left India after this particular massacre because they felt very insecure in their own land, in their own country. And they settled in different parts of the world. And wherever the film had a screening and wherever I was there, there were women, there were people who came and hugged me and they cried. And it's a kind of a closure that people seek, I think. That's what I'm thinking in retrospective, that, what happens when people watch these kind of difficult films on the screen. So those experiences move them as well, and the kind of closure that they've been trying to seek in terms of justice from the courts, it never happens, because after watching the film they'll come and they'll hug me and then they'll tell me their story. So I think, it got the national award and everything. So I'm happy, I'm glad that it got the national award. But I think I'll tell you, for me, also I feel it's a very fulfilling way of receiving that from my audience directly. The kind of response that I got, it's very gratifying at some level. It just justifies all your journey of 5 years in making a film and everything else that comes with it. I think Sandra knows this. She's also done a film which is deeply personal and very difficult. So
Yeah, but what I would say, and I do want to go to Sandra next, but I just want to follow up on their movie 1984, because it opens up a couple of interesting, I think, questions. And I got to be a little careful about how we address this, just given I'm a foreigner in India and I am here as an observer, and I don't want to weigh into domestic politics. At the same time, I would be an idiot if I didn't understand some of the context behind making a film about the events of 1984 following the assassination of Prime Minister Gandhi. And I would be a fool if I didn't understand how sensitive that was. At any point, did you feel, was there political pressure on you? Was there, like, when did you make the film 1984?
The film, I started doing it in 2012 and the film ended in 2017.
Are you getting social media death threats? I'm stunned that you tell me more about making that movie in sort of the context of, I won't say safety, but just the context of the political environment, we'll say.
Well, yeah, when I started, it was Indian National Congress that was in power, and that is exactly the same political party that masterminded the entire massacre in 1984. So I was extremely fearful, because of course I was researching and I was filming, so I was all alone in Delhi. So I was putting up in a small room in a Sikh temple and completely underground, trying to do research and put things together, because I was also trying to film one of the person who's the main accused in this massacre. And it took me a year to convince him, and through different people. But then he agreed to give the interview, and then I decided that I will go on my own to film him. I did not take my sound recordist or my camera person with me, because I did not want to risk their life. And I was like, okay, I can just put my life on stake if something happens, So I took that decision, and then I just went on my own with all the equipment to his place to, interview him. It was intimidating because, like he said, whatever he had to say. And towards the end of it, I realized that, he knew everything about me. Like, he had done his thorough research about me, where I live, who I am, where am I in Delhi, where do I come from, Mumbai, and what all have I done on the documentary. So that was a little bit frightening, to be honest, that, someone has done those kind of things on you, and you feel that, okay, you are a single filmmaker living in Mumbai all on your own, coming to Delhi again on my own and trying to make all these things happen. So definitely, and even towards the end of it, when I was screening the documentary, the film got complete, and I was screening the documentary in Delhi in some film festivals and universities. So I got a call from CBI, and it was like, oh my god, CBI, like it's like the agents in India. And then they would call me and they're like, your film, it can cause so much of trouble. And I was like, sir, you're most welcome to come and watch the film, because I think it's a very well balanced film, and it doesn't really will not instigate any kind of communal violence. If you think so, then you can stop the film if you think. So they came for the film screening. It was very interesting for me, because in my family, we haven't seen the police or the police station. And here I had the CBI agents like sitting right, they didn't really introduce themselves. Only later I got to know that they are from the CBI. So they were watching the film. So it was very intimidating, but then I think you sail through these times, I mean, it all, I mean, I don't know. I feel that, I really feel that what is the life purpose? Like what's my life purpose if I'm not taking if I'm not taking the risk and saying what I have to say, then, probably what is that I'm living for? So these are the questions that, really come to my mind. So.
Oh, it's an incredible story. I'll probably get in trouble if I go any further down this particular road with you, but it's a fascinating story. But let me pull back the lens, as it were. And Rukshan, I'll go to you for this one. A lot of inspiring stories that we've talked about today. What do you say to a 16, 17-year-old who has this vision for some injustice or something that's deeply personal to them, that they want to maybe pick up a camera and try to put something together? I mean, is it enough to have an iPhone and go out and give it a shot, or what do you tell somebody?
Yeah, so yeah, of course, like this entire filmmaking process has become much more accessible to the common public today because of that, we have cameras on our phone which can shoot 4K or full HD, and and a lot of these videos, the DIY videos or filmmaking videos are available on YouTube that one can watch and understand the basic craft of it. So for someone who just wants to try it, my advice is that go and give it a shot, because I often have seen that like people when are in the 16, 17-year-olds, especially in India, they have so much pressure from everyone in the family to take up a certain career option, and they are also like kind of figuring it out, and like people will tell you things which scare you, like, oh, how will you earn and who will look after you, we are not giving you money, so even if this kid is kind of trying to figure out that, okay, can I make a film, is it for me, he doesn't really have an option because he's so scared, right? So they end up taking up something which is like more promising per se, but engineering also hardly gives you a job these days in India, so so then I feel it's very important to understand what do you really want to do, like why do you want to say the story, and then figure out the medium how you want to tell it, because like there are animation apps which are like so easy through which you can tell a story, or you can just pick up the camera, edit it on your phone and kind of tell a story. So yeah, but you have to go out, like you have to feel, if you feel strongly for something, figure out a way how to say the story, and I think if you are honest about your feelings, you always will end up making something which is like really powerful. I remember I was on the jury of for one documentary film festival a couple of years back, and I was this young jury at that point because they just wanted to take my perspective, and there was this girl who made a film on so she was in love with this boy and they were from different caste, and so the families didn't agree for their marriage, and she decided, and she was not even a filmmaker, she was just one regular girl from a village, and she decided to pick up the camera and film this entire process, that why just because of a different caste, why your family didn't let me marry. So she was there, right there at the wedding also filming, and I saw the film, it kind of opened my eyes, and it was such a personal story which only she can tell. So every story is so unique, so you have each one of us have a story which the other person can't tell, so you have to tell your own story, so I leave it at that.
Sure, no, right on. I'll come back to Sandra now too, and sort of pick up on that same theme. What do you tell aspiring filmmakers? What do you tell young people who want to do this? What are you telling me, right? Maybe I'm mid-career or whatever, but maybe I want to pick up a camera and, I have an experience, whatever it is. Like, how do you get someone who has a spark of an idea to actually get from that idea to something on a screen somewhere?
Well, I have taught documentary film production for 20
come take your class
for 22 years. Yes.
Yes, sir.
So I spend every semester starting with this, and I feel like this is in some ways an extension of what I do in the classroom. I feel like we are the international team of myth busters of what a documentary truly is. And I think that certainly the idea of, people really have this idea that it is the other part, that it doesn't really have a lot to do with the movies that we go to Netflix to see. And that is probably the biggest misconception, I think, in terms of what of the work that we do. Number one, I think that we have this idea that we do sit in an office and think, oh, what is the topic I can make my next movie about? What is fundable? And that certainly is that's not the way of the artist to begin with. I mean, we have to, we really have to think about. I have people that say to me after almost 30 years in this business, when are you going to make a real movie? and there is nothing more condescending or discouraging to me, because in some ways I am making a real movie about real things. And honestly, life is much stranger than fiction. It's much more complex. And one of the things, especially with, I actually always have my students, and I teach both narrative and documentary filmmaking. And I think that the best way to teach film production is to begin their career, whatever they want to do in the film industry, is to begin in documentary, to go out and learn to see the world, see what is around them, what ignites their passion, what ignites their anger, you were talking about with Tina about, did she get death threats because of her documentary 1984? And it's like, I hope she did. I hope she got death. I have never made a movie where I haven't gotten a death threat or been threatened to be sued. And that's when I'm like, okay, now I'm making something that is affecting people. And I think that idea of wanting to affect the other person, one of the very interesting things that I always encounter with my students is that I think that they come into it, and I teach at a very elite university, so they come in with egos very much intact, and they want to be able to express their vision with the world, and it's much more important about them being able to find their voice within the world. And so the first thing is to go out into the world, see what compels you. And usually, I think it's also important, because we only have a semester usually when we're looking for projects, I say, is that let's start with something that you think you know. And I don't mean know in terms of facts and figures, but something that you truly know to be true. My very first film that I made as an undergraduate was my professor, my filmmaker Michael Romer, said to me, make a movie about something you know. Well, I had grown up in Portland, Oregon as a figure skater. I trained as a figure skater. I turned professional at 15 years old. And
really?
Yeah, really. And started and started training myself. Well, one of the people that I grew up with was this very talented 15-year-old girl who was going to her first national figure skating competition. I made a movie about her coming from sort of the socioeconomical wrong side of the tracks, going to being the most talented skater to this day that I have ever seen. And, and just, is she going to be able to make it in a sport that is much more like a beauty contest than it is anything else? I made this film. It was very affecting. But then 8 years later, that skater became known to the world as Tanya Harding, who was the skater who was involved in the 1994 scandal with another skater named Nancy Kerrigan. My documentary became the basis for the movie in 2017, I, Tanya. It was the visual basis there. And the idea was, I never had any idea that this is where it would go. But this is something that I knew deeply, personally, profoundly. And I was just telling her story. So I think that, I'm in a sense, I'm my students' worst nightmare, for that kind of thing. But if you just follow, that instinct, which I truly believe each and every one of us has.
God, I am like desperate to talk to you about Tanya Harding, but I'm going to try to stay on. I'm going to try to stay on topic. And
we can have our own little
but actually, it's funny that actually I think brings up a relevant point, because you mentioned Tanya Harding in the movie I, Tonya, and like, it's pop culture, and it's sort of, she's famous, so it's very recognizable and marketable, let's say. And I'll turn to Vinamra for this. How do you compete with, I'll just think in the documentary space, and I'm just an average whatever, right? I don't know anything, but I got Netflix and Prime and Hotstar. I watched Tiger King, right? Because I heard about it from people. It became very popular, and I see some eye rolls, which is fine. But I watched it. It's pretty compelling television. I think about all the Michael Moore thing, Fahrenheit 9/11 and Bowling for Columbine. I think about this reality show, The Matchmaker, which is on, I don't know if that's in the United States or not, but here on Indian Netflix, it's about basically an Indian matchmaker, and it's not salacious, but it's good, great characters, and it follows people around as they try to get married and stuff. But whatever. The point is, Vinamra, for you, short story long, is how do you compete in a marketplace where it's great that everyone has access to make films, but now everyone's making films. So how do you get your voice heard?
I think it all boils down. I'll tell you, when you're talking about the cell phones, I think most of my films have been shot on iPhone, cell phone. And trust me, if you have a good story, if you have an engaging story, it doesn't matter what you shoot it on. Because that iPhone allowed me, because I participated in a festival, in a French festival, and I won the grand prize, and then I got the grant to make a bigger film. So that iPhone can actually, make way for the bigger budget or the accessories that you want. So at the end of the day, I think it's when we talk about competing with the commercial stuff, or the things which are out there. I think first and foremost, you have to have a story that you want to tell. Now, I can't go out and say, okay, this is working in these times. I think this is the hot subject, and I should jump in and make something like this, and maybe they'll pick it up, or this is what is selling right now. And I think that is how all artists are driven. I mean, you want to tell your story. That is the first part, and that has to be very honest and very organic for an artist. It can't be coming from a place where you're thinking about the end point. Okay, this is where I want this to end up. You want to tell your story, and I think that basically, I mean, we have been telling stories. If you want to tell the story, you'll just go and narrate it to your friends. I mean, that is what, how bad you want to tell the story. You'll just go out, and I think that is what triggers for us to make films in the first place. And then, yes, and it's a especially for filmmakers who have a point to make, who have a voice, who were talking about injustice and all. So that's a very fine line, because at the end of the day, there are a lot of things that are out there, a lot of content which is out there. You have to focus on the craft of telling a story. The message and everything else that you have has to be cultivated into it. And I think the stronger your storytelling craft is, the better it will be for you to pitch any kind of idea to any kind of audience. Because if you mastered the art of getting your point across in the medium that you have, that you love, whether it's theater, drama, writing, poem, song, films, when you know your craft, then I know that I'm able to, this is how I'm master of, expressing. When you are equipped enough to express yourself, then it doesn't matter whether you're talking about this topic or that topic, you will definitely hit home, because you know how to reach out to people. And the rest of it, the economics, the market thing follows. And I think that is the destiny of a film, and you have to fight for it. Every aspect is different. Raising money, making your film reach to different audience. It's a part of the struggle, and that is the same. Even in US, when we went on this trip, we learned one thing, that our stories are not very different. You guys have gone through the same thing. The independent filmmakers have to go through the same thing. whether in US, whether in India, and any other country. And I think slowly and slowly, that is why this kind of community is very important, because we have to fight for those systems. We have to place those structures. If the structure doesn't exist in your country or your place or your community, go out there. We can't just sit and complain, okay, we don't have a way to reach the audience. We'll have to fight for it. It's part, because how badly you want the story to be out there. You'll create those systems. And that is what I think has happened in US. That is why we have a market, coming back to another point, that is why they have a market for documentaries right now, because the change has come. The structures and systems are coming in place. The taste is changing. The audiences wants to go out there and see a documentary. So that kind of change has to be cultivated. You can't just expect someone else to come and open up the market for us. We'll have to create that market ourselves, I think.
Right on. It's actually okay, Sandra. I'm going to give you kind of the last word on this because we're getting a little short on time.
Oh, I just have to say that I completely agree with him about first of all, we are living in a very different time, and don't disparage your iPhone or your smartphone. Using your Steven Soderbergh, who is doing feature films, is absolutely now going to exclusively this smartphone. In that smartphone, you have a powerful 4K camera, which is better than a bigger camera that you can actually, and you have access. And that's what we need as documentarians in particular, is access into small spaces to illuminate those smaller stories that, you know, that don't involve CGI, for example. So I think that's, and also just in terms of the change is that, yes, we have the access to the equipment, we have the access, the gate, and it's interesting, we are also, the pandemic, for example, has even given us an opportunity. I have been online with a lot of other filmmakers about, and the International Documentary Association, for example, about these festivals that were canceled. These festivals that are the lifeline to actually getting a documentary out there and on Netflix or whatever. I mean, it's really the marketplace for it. And these festivals are in some ways, very pretentious, in the sense that they're like, well, you can only premiere your film. We only want to show your film here if it's a premiere. And then so you specify your film to be premiered at that particular festival, and then the festival gets canceled, which is what happened in March, right? And so now filmmakers are saying, oh my goodness, what do I do? Because the festival is now considering it a premiere and no other festival will accept it, and they never even showed it. What do I do? Well, the truth of the matter is we're the creators. We're the ones that they should not be the gatekeepers to, and what the pandemic has enabled us to do is to get the material directly to the consumers and have that be a viable path.
Awesome. It's a perfect way for us to wrap up. But before we do, I want to do a rapid fire. You talked about marketing and getting your voice out. I want to get a couple of recommendations from each of you for documentaries that maybe I haven't watched, maybe I haven't heard of, but are accessible, something I can get on Netflix or the like. I can't, go to Venice and watch the Venice Film Festival or whatever. So let's go around to each of you, if that's all right. Just get a couple of recommendations and we can put those in the links as well. Who wants to start? Sandra, do you have a couple in mind? Maybe we could start with you.
Oh, sure. You can watch the Tanya Harding film, Sharp Edges,
okay,
on Hulu. That Way Madness Lies, my film that we were talking about earlier, is on iTunes and Amazon Prime. But I would also recommend, very good friend of mine made a film called Ernie and Joe, Crisis Cops, which is on HBO. And I think you can get it free right now on YouTube. Oh my gosh, I could give you such a list, but I'm gonna stop there.
Okay, cool, thank you. Let's go to Tina next. A couple recommendations.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I'll just take one more minute to recommend other filmmakers' work as well. So
please,
just give me a minute and yeah.
Yeah, sure. Let's go to Rukshana.
I would say recommend Honeyland. It's a fantastic film. And there is another film called Buena Vista Social Club, which is my all-time favorite. These two I would recommend.
We want to spread the word. Dinamra.
Sure.
A recent documentary that I watched that I really liked was 13 on Netflix. it's a very good documentary, and I'd recommend. And it again talks about like the subject that we are talking about, the kind of impact movies can have on society. The Birth of Nation, when they talk about that, it's incredible. I think people should watch that.
Okay, good. And how about your own work? Where can we see that?
It's there. It's again, now I've made it private. The links are private,
Yeah.
but there's a channel called Black Salt Films on YouTube, where I'll soon be uploading all my stuff because of the festivals. Now I'm open to putting the films online. So yeah.
Very cool. Thank you. And then Tina, well, let's circle back to you.
My films are on Vimeo.com. The film names are The Woods Are Calling, and the other one is The Dear Tree and Me. Both of them are free links. Yeah, and then the film that got the National Award, 1984, When the Sun Didn't Rise, it is on Vimeo on demand. So you can just go and search for my name or the title of the film, you'll be able to watch it. One of the films that I would recommend is I'm Not Your Negro, and it is on Netflix. So
Yes.
yeah,
James Baldwin, right?
Yeah, right. James.
Okay,
And
interesting.
another film, yeah, I think John and Jane by Usher. That's also a very powerful film. It's about people working in the call centers in India and how they call in US to collect the loans. And it's a very, very interesting film because they all have different names. Like they have Indian names and they have American names just because they call US to collect to collect loans. So it's known as John and Jane. So you can, I think, just find it on the internet somewhere. I'll have to see where it is available. It was on HBO. I hope they have it, but we'll have to just check once more.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you again, everybody. There goes Tina Kaur, Rukshana Tabashum. Gosh, I got that wrong. I'm so sorry. Then Vinamra Pacharia, and of course, Sandra Luco, whose name I got butchered early on. I'm glad I got it right that time. Thanks to all of you very much for joining us today. I wish we had more time. I mean, look, my big takeaway here at the end is that, people are compelled by stories, and a good story will see you through. So I look forward to seeing all of your stories as we continue and move forward. And for everyone watching, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, Andrew.
Love talking to you guys.